How to Write a Tax-Efficient Will by Deborah Bowers, Chapter 10. Married with Children. Now that Jane had tied the knot again, her focus was on making it work and doing her best for herself and her family. She had done her best for her parents and sister Annie. Now she needed to focus on creating a warm and loving home for herself and Edward. Jane wasted no time. She hinted to him about writing a will, and he seemed okay with the proposal. They discussed what they wanted to occur should anything happen to them and made some notes. It was in both their wishes that should anything happen to either of them before they had kids, they would want their assets to be divided equally between the two families. Edward provided a list of names on his side whom he would want to benefit, and Jane provided a list of names on her side. They were soon no longer worrying about those lists, as Jane began to feel unwell most mornings, only to go on to provide a positive pregnancy test. She was elated. Edward was even more excited than her. He started to ramble on about making arrangements for university and grandchildren when all she had in her hand was a positive pregnancy test. Alarmingly, he also started to discuss the next child, saying that it was best to have them all at once, one after the other, to allow them to grow up together. All in all, they were both happy, and their joy could not be contained. Soon, baby Eric was welcomed, and not long after that came baby Lisa. They both decided that they could not wait any longer to write their wills. So much had happened in the past 3 years since their marriage. They had bought a house in the leafy suburbs of Richmond, London, as tenants in common, as each of them had contributed 50% of the cost. The property was valued at £1.5 million. They had both contributed significantly to the deposit and wanted to establish themselves in an area where they could take advantage of the outdoors. They ensured that the property was duly registered as a tenancy in common in both their respective shares. This would mean that both of them would own half of the house. Their relationship had blossomed from strength to strength, and Jane was certain that Edward was there for the long haul. He had doted on her, and the children had brought him great joy. It was now time to consider what they would do about their wills. They arranged to visit the solicitors, who advised them to consider mirror wills. These are wills where the couple does exactly the same thing with their property, but each one has a separate will. Each party is at liberty to change the terms of their will, but it can work well where there is love and trust, and allows greater flexibility for a surviving spouse to adjust to changing circumstances. They decided to proceed with mirror wills. Jane would pass all her property to Edward, should he survive her, and Edward would do the same, resulting in 0% tax on the death of the first to die. They would also appoint each other as sole executor and trustee in the first instance, so that the survivor would administer the estate. In the event that they were to pass whilst the children were still minors, they appointed Annie as guardian of the children in the first instance, and Edward's younger brother Paul Mark, only if Annie was unwilling or unable to act as guardian. The solicitor explained to them that they could choose up to 4 persons to act as executors and trustees in their absence. Jane explained that she was not comfortable with the children inheriting the property at age 18. The solicitor explained to her that she could extend the age of inheritance to any age she preferred. Although the law of England and Wales allows children to hold property at age 18, it would create a 0 to 18 trust for them if their parents passed whilst they were under that age. The law also gave favorable treatment to an 18 to 25-year trust, as many parents were uncomfortable with their children inheriting at 18. Jane and Edward decided to allow the children to inherit at age 25 and to apply the same age of inheritance to any grandchildren. They hoped that they would learn the value of work and money before coming into their inheritance. They chose as the executors and trustees Paul Mark, Edward's brother, of 70 Skyline Close, London SW1, 2LJ, to act with Annie, Jane's sister Annie Jo Blackwell, of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London SW1 5RJ, and Annie's cousin Lacey Brown of 50 Acre Close, London SW5 4XZ. The solicitor explained that the trustees may appoint professionals to assist them to carry out their duties and that any fees would be deducted from the estate. He also explained the power of trustees to hold a property on trust for sale, with additional powers to postpone sale, accumulate income, and apply capital and income for the benefit of the children. Further, that they could write an expression of wishes to guide the trustees as to how they would like them to manage the needs of the children. They confirmed that they were happy to proceed on that basis and with that understanding. He drew their attention to the fact that there is no inheritance tax to be paid by a bereaved minor's trust, covering the ages of 0 to 18. But some tax would have to be paid in relation to an 18 to 25-year trust, at which age the beneficiaries would come into their entitlement and the property would exit the trust. Generally, tax is charged when assets are placed into the trust at 20%, when assets come out of the trust at 4.2%, and at the 10-year anniversary of the trust, as they intended for the trust to run only until the 25th birthday of the children. It would only run for 7 years after their 18th birthday, thereby avoiding the 10-year anniversary charge if they were to die before the 25th birthday of the children. The exit fee of 4.2% would have to be paid. Confirmed their desire to benefit their grandchildren. This meant should Eric or Lisa predecease them leaving children, they desired that the child left behind, their grandchild, should receive or would receive the portion which would have passed to Eric or Lisa. Jane and Edward lived in hope that they would both live to see the day of their grandchildren's graduation from university. They were only preparing for possibilities in the hope that they would never happen. They also made provision to address the unlikely event that they should all pass in the same incident to benefit Annie's sons, Jack Blackwell and John Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London SW1 5RJ, and arrange for any residue to benefit their favorite charity, Cats Lives Matter. The solicitor advised them to consider changing their nominations now to hold the property in trust for the benefit of Eric and Lisa. This had the benefit of those assets passing outside their estate. This would reduce the value of their estate for the purpose of inheritance tax. As the assets were passing outside the estate, Eric and Lisa could benefit from age 18, unless the funds were assigned to a separate trust fund to administer them, usually referred to as a relevant property trust. Funds in such trusts are treated as existing outside the estate of the deceased. They decided that they were happy for the children to have access to the pension, death in service, and other funds at age 18, but they would keep the matter under review. He explained that relevant property trusts were great at protecting children from gold diggers, etc., as they were discretionary trusts, and although the trustees could make a decision to benefit the beneficiary had no ownership of the assets in the trust, as they belonged to the trust. There would be charges to be incurred in relation to such a trust for assets going in, coming out, and at the 10-year anniversary. They set out writing their mirror wills as follows. Last will and testament. I, Jane Doe Mark, of 50 Richmond Park, London, 014-2WX, being of sound mind, make this will as my last will and testament. I hereby revoke all former wills, codicils, or other testamentary instruments made by me. This will relates to all my property located in England and Wales. 1. I appoint my husband, Edward Mark of 50 Richmond Park, London 010L4, 2WX, as sole executor of this my will. In the event that he should predecease me, or be unwilling or unable to act, I appoint the following persons as executors and trustees of my will. My sister Annie Doe Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London, SW1, 5RJ. My cousin Lacey Brown of 50 Acre Close, London, SW5, 4XZ. And my brother-in-law Paul Mark of 70 Skyline Close, London, SW1, 2LJ. 3. In this will, the term trustee shall mean those of my executors who obtain probate of this will and trustees of any trust arising under this will. 4. My trustees shall hold the residue of my estate upon trust for sale with power to postpone sale and to accumulate the income of my children under the age of 25 and have the power at their own discretion to apply income to the needs of that child as those children and to cater for their maintenance, education, and needs. 5. The standard provisions and all the special provisions of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners Second Edition shall apply. 6. Section 31 of the Trustee Act 1925 is hereby excluded and shall not apply to any trust arising under this will. 7. I direct that all my just debts and funeral expenses be paid as soon as reasonably practicable after my death. 8. I give all my property to my husband, Edward Mark, absolutely, should he survive me by 30 days. In the event that we should both pass in the same incident, the residue of my estate shall be held by my trustees for the benefit of my children per stirpes until they have attained the age of 25 years. 9. For the avoidance of doubt, in the event that any of my children have predeceased me, leaving issue, I give to any of their children equally, my grandchildren who survive me, the share which would have fallen to that child upon obtaining the age of 25 years. 10. Should I survive my husband and become the sole surviving parent, whilst my children are still minors, I appoint my sister Annie Jo Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London, SW1, 5RJ as guardian of any of my children under the age of 18. However, should she be unwilling or unable to act, I appoint my brother-in-law, Paul Mark, of 70 Skyline Close, London, SW1, 2LJ, as their legal guardian. 11. In the likely event that my husband, children, and I should all pass in the same incident, with my children leaving no issue, I direct that all of my estate be divided equally between the children of my sister Annie Jo Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London, SW1, 5RJ, namely Jake and John Blackwell, and my brother-in-law, Paul Mark, of 70 Skyline Close, London, SW1, 2LJ. Should any of the beneficiaries in Clause 11 of this will predecease me, I give the remaining beneficiaries equally the portion which would have fallen to that beneficiary. 13. I wish to be cremated. 14. Should my cat Felix survive me, I wish for him to be cared for by my nephew Jake Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London SW1 5RJ. 15. The residue of my estate I give to the registered charity Cat Lives Matter, charity number 2019-2020, whose registered address is 148 Hatton Cross, London SW1 2HL. As witness my hand this date, day and month and year. Signature of Jane Doe Mark. Signed by the testator in our presence and attested by us as witnesses in the presence of the testator and of each other. Witness 1, name, occupation, address and signature. Witness 2, name, occupation, address, signature. Will of Edward Mark. Last will and testament. I, Edward Mark of 50 Richmond Park, London 0142WX, being of sound mind, make this will as my last will and testament. I hereby revoke all former wills, codicils, or other testamentary instruments made by me. This will relates to all my property in England and Wales. 1. I appoint my wife, Jane Doe Mark of 50 Richmond Park, London 04014-2WX as sole executrix of this my will. 2. In the event that she should predecease me or be unwilling or unable to act, I appoint the following persons as executors and trustees of my will. My sister-in-law, Annie Doe Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London SW1 5RJ. My wife's cousin, Lacey Brown of 50 Acre Close, London SW5 4XZ. And my brother, Paul Mark of 70 Skyline Close, London SW1 2LJ. 3. In this will, the term trustees shall mean those of my executors who obtain probate of this will and trustees of any trust arising under this will. 4. My trustees shall hold the residue of my estate upon trust for sale with power to postpone sale and to accumulate the income of any of my children under the age of 25 and have the power at their own discretion to apply income and capital to the needs of that child or those children and to cater for their maintenance, education, or benefit. 5. The standard provisions and all the special provisions of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, 2nd edition, shall apply. Section 31 of the Trustee Act 1925 is hereby excluded and shall not apply to any trust arising under this will. I direct that all my debts and funeral expenses be paid as soon as reasonably practicable after my death. 8. I give all of my property to my wife, Jane Doe Mark, absolutely, should she survive me by 30 days. In the event that we should both pass in the same incident, the residue of my estate shall be held by my trustees for the equal benefit of my children per stupes until they have attained the age of 25 years. 9. Clause 8 of this will shall apply to my grandchildren in the same manner as it applies to my children. 10. For the avoidance of doubt, in the event that any of my children have predeceased me leaving issue, I give to any of their children equally my grandchildren who survive me the share which would have fallen to that child upon attaining the age of 25 years. 11. Should I survive my wife and become the sole surviving parent, whilst my children are still minors, I appoint my sister-in-law Annie Doe Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London SW1 5RJ as guardian of any of my children under the age of 18. However, should she be unwilling or unable to act, I appoint my brother Paul Mark of 70 Skyline Close, London SW1 2LG as the legal guardian. 12. In unlikely event that my wife, children, and I should pass in the same incident with no issue, I direct that all of my estate be divided equally between the children of my sister-in-law Annie Doe Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London SW1 5RJ, namely Jake and John Blackwell, and my brother Paul Mark of 70 Skyline Close, London SW1 2LG. Should any of the beneficiaries in Clause 12 of this will predecease me, I give to the remaining beneficiaries equally the portion which would have fallen to that beneficiary. I wish to be cremated. 14. Should my cat Felix survive me, I wish for him to be cared for by my nephew Jake Blackwell of 40 Sunset Boulevard, London SW1 5RJ. 16. The residue of my estate I give to the registered charity Cat Lives Matter, charity number 2019-2020, whose registered address is 148 Hatton Cross, London SW1 2HL. As witness my hand this day, date of month 20, signature of Edward Mark, signed by the testator in our presence and attested by us as witnesses in the presence of the testator and of each other. Witness 1, name, occupation, address, and signature. Witness 2, name, occupation, address, and signature. Things to consider. Set up trust for the kids as early as possible. A trust fund is as simple as a bank account at your local bank with the name of the child on it and your name as the trustee. It really is not rocket science. Place all cash, gifts in there and use it as a dumping ground to save extra cash for them. This cash will be considered as their cash, not yours, and this trust will incur no charges whilst the children are between 0 and 18 years old.